summer day. Holy, it was like, you know, the tourism board couldn't have dialed it.
What it is, and then you can go anywhere. It's just late.
We'll see. I don't know.
If not, I wonder if no one's here, maybe
Put it more center.
camera more centered.
Yeah, let's do
maybe,
that. We'll just
yeah.
move it over. I
Yeah.
have it all on an extension cord.
So
Hello.
for that halftime because the place was jumping, and so they thought this was it.
Bethany's in and Jan is in. Is that your
Okay,
person?
yes.
In facilitation first. Alright.
Oh, is that right?
I guess that's her business. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Hello. How is everybody? Let me take this off. We'll be starting in a couple minutes. Everybody's been in here.
The vertical works well back.
Oh, good. Thank you. There.
Vertical better than horizontal. Oh,
So you think vertical is better than horizontal?
Oh, sorry, no.
Horizontal? Okay.
Whatever you're on now, it works.
Hi, Tamara. How are you? I don't know, Tamara, do you?
where are you seeing people?
I just admitted her. I got a pop down.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that. Hello.
Do you get to see the squares and all them on it? Nice.
Let's see. And it's recording. Okay, I think we have 2 more minutes before we start. Can you all hear me okay? There.
So will you prompt with the questions?
Yeah.
From people?
Yeah, sound good. Hello. There's another person. Katie, hi Katie.
I wish we could see them.
I know we can't see you. Can you see everybody? I think they all have their video off.
Yeah, they just got their video up.
If you want, go ahead, turn your video on. And we are gonna get started. Okay. Hey, everybody, we're so glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us. I am Maureen O'Keefe, and we are at Purple Mountain Physical Therapy in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And this is Anya Nyson, our amazing speaker, the social worker. I'm so glad that you joined us. I cannot see any of your faces. I think you all have your video off. So can you confirm, are you able to hear me? I can see that we are not muted. So I think you should be able to hear me, but
Yes, I can hear you.
awesome. All right, thanks for joining us. Thanks, Michelle. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so Anya is a social worker who is in private counseling here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And in my role in pelvic health physical therapy, I'm often working with individuals, men and women, who are experiencing a large amount of anxiety. Also, sometimes they will have depression. And sometimes my patients may not experience either of those, but it's common that I am working with individuals who's who may be a mom who has a child who's not weathered so well during the pandemic. So it's very common that I'm working with families and they're telling me that they're worried about their child. I am hearing more from parents that children are still struggling. I had a parent this week who has a child who's maybe only 6 or 7 years old, and she's worried about the social development of her little girl, and also some of the anxiety that her daughter is experiencing just with social things. But I also very commonly am talking to moms whose kids are middle school, high school, or college and have a ton of anxiety. So tonight, Anya Nyson, whose private practice in East Grand Rapids specializes in helping individuals with anxiety, depression, and processing and healing trauma, is here to speak. Her patients that I have worked with love her. Anya does not fool around with helping individuals really experience progress in counseling. She uses a lot of mind-body methods that are proven in research and maybe more holistic at trying to help individuals overcome their anxiety, depression, or trauma. And I am so impressed by what she's able to do with her patients that I invited her to speak here and asked if she would be willing to share. She's very generous with her time. I'm sure all of you here know that counselors are slammed these days, and it can be very difficult to speak with or meet a counselor. So we're grateful for her time. Anya is accepting new clients. So if you would be interested in working with her, you can go to her website, anyanyson.com, ANYANYSON.com. And you can connect with her through that. And if you feel that she's a good fit for you, she does meet with individuals in person at her private practice in East Grand Rapids, Michigan, but also she does telehealth and has done a lot of telehealth through the pandemic. So she can help any of you who may be watching remotely. All right, Anya, what I would like to begin with is, can you tell us how you got into counseling, maybe a little bit of your background, and why tonight you think speaking about anxiety and depression is what might be most helpful for everyone who's attending?
Well, thank you, Maureen. First, I have to say Maureen is fabulous too. I also have used her. If anyone needs pelvic floor PT, she's fabulous. In fact, she's helped me to not pee when I sneeze. So kudos for that.
Yeah, you don't have to live with those problems.
It's great. And tonight I just wanted to be very conversational and very relaxed. So I'm very upfront. I'll tell you, I came into counseling from getting a cosmetology license first. I'm a late bloomer. I've had trauma in my history, and I had a cosmetology license, realized I did not like doing hair. I did it for about 9 months, but through that realized what I liked was when that person was in my chair and shared with me. And it's that maybe bump in the road or learning led me to my passion. And it's very interesting how the longer I work, the more I'm seeing anxiety come up. And it is interesting, when I started, I just wanted to work with depression and anxiety. I didn't want to deal with trauma that seemed too scary, but it didn't take long to see that almost everyone with depression and anxiety have underlying trauma. And that's an interesting concept too, that trauma, we often think are just big scary things that happen to us, but we need to reframe trauma as not the things that happen to us, but trauma is what happens to us internally because of the things that happen to us. So it can be anything. It can be, pushed away from our parents or an assault, all kinds of different things. Attachment trauma. Traumas often happen in relationship with people. And since the pandemic and with young people, I'm seeing so much anxiety. The culture now has more anxiety now than the average psychiatric patient had in the 1950s who was inpatient. So it's epidemic. So the more we can help ourselves as much as we can, get the help for our children, for ourselves, the better off we can be. And we're fighting an uphill battle, really.
I know,
Mhm.
It's tough. So one of the questions asked was, what are some of the signs of anxiety? Because I often, when I'm working with individuals, I might ask them, do you experience anxiety? And they'll tell me, no, I don't think I have that. I have a friend who has anxiety attacks. Thank goodness I've never had one. And yet when I'm speaking with them and working with them, I'm discovering some signs that I think might point towards anxiety. So can you tell us from your clinical perspective, what are some of the signs and symptoms of anxiety where somebody who might not know that they even are having it might be experiencing it?
Okay, well, let's break it down. So I want us to focus on 3 areas where we're going to have information. Our thoughts, our emotions, and our body. Those 3 things make up our internal experience. So our thoughts, emotions, and body are how we internally experience external stimuli. Okay, so I wish we could be more interactive and hear people talk and things like that, or leave messages, but I'd love to hear from people what they feel anxious about. So anxious thoughts. What if, anytime we say what if, is often an indication that we're having anxious thoughts. What if I'm late for this meeting? What if we can't make the mortgage payment? Emotions of anxiety, fear, things like that. And in our body especially, might be racing heart, fidgety fingers. Some people get flushed. We all have our unique identifiers in our body of what anxiety is. I did bring, I'll share this and read this. If we want to look at how people are diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, I thought I'd share this. So you would need to have 3 or more of these symptoms for at least for more days than not in the past 6 months. So restlessness, feeling keyed up or on edge, being easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating or mind going blank, irritability, muscle tension, sleep disturbance. So difficulty falling or staying asleep, or restless, unsatisfying sleep. So that's the DSM criteria for being diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. We can also have social anxiety.
So sleep was a big piece of that, and also muscle stuff. So there's this whole mind-body connection that comes into play.
Yes.
And then what were the other ones that were at the top of that?
So restlessness, so again, that agitation in the body.
Restless. You have trouble sitting down and just watching a television show.
Right, or even your foot jumping up and down as you're sitting, being easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating or mind going blank, being irritable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're not feeling like yourself and you're irritable, if everything is annoying you, then that can be a sign of anxiety. And that can be something that's, to me, a sleeper. My patients will come to me and they might tell me their story about how they were aggravated with an experience at a store checking out. And to me, I can see how that could be somewhat frustrating, but their level of responsiveness to that aggravation might be more than would be necessary. And that can be a sign and symptom of anxiety.
Yes,
yes,
for sure.
And what I find in their body with their pelvic floor, the pelvic floor does help. It does respond to emotions and to what we're experiencing physically. And the pelvic floor muscles, which line the bottom of the pelvis, are really unique in the human body because they have nerves in them that come from the autonomic nervous system, which is your fight or flight nervous system. And therefore, the pelvic floor responds to stress and anxiety quite readily. Your bicep doesn't really respond. You know, you can relax your biceps fairly easily, but if you're a stressed out person, it's going to often hit your pelvic floor. So then that presents in my patients as bladder, bowel, and pain symptoms are usually the main things. They might lose urine unexpectedly. They can feel like they have to pee all the time. They feel like they never empty their pee fully. They might have diarrhea and then they have constipation. They could also have pelvic pain where their lower abdomen hurts them all the time, or intimacy bothers them because everything down there sort of tightens up in reaction to what's happening to this anxiety or the stress that's in your life. So when you're working with somebody in a counseling setting who is experiencing a lot of anxiety, how do you help them move forward through that so that their body can experience life, because life is anxiety producing.
Right. Well, there's, again, those 3 areas. So sometimes we might have to start with the body to calm the body down. So we can do that with breath work, meditation, things like that.
Stop with that.
Yeah.
I love Anya uses all this breath work and meditation because it's proven in the counseling world. And also she is a yoga instructor. If you can down train through your breathing, it's really powerful.
It is. It is.
And we in pelvic health physical therapy use that all the time. We're constantly working on assessing someone's ability to breathe. And what we find is that their diaphragm is often not working effectively. And when the diaphragm isn't working effectively, they're breathing shallow using their neck and their front chest muscles, or they're breathing ineffectively using different muscles of the rib cage. And that in itself increases anxiety, because when you breathe effectively with your diaphragm, you are optimizing your autonomic nervous system to calm down your fight or flight system. So Anya's using that in her counseling as one nice method. And you would potentially recommend people at home, you're probably teaching your patients how to do this effectively.
Right.
It does, but you're going to benefit from learning how to do it from Anya or myself, because our patients don't know how to do it effectively, right?
Right.
That's what we see. They think they're breathing well, but they are not.
Right. Just trying to get someone to find their diaphragm and get them to blow it out and breathe from it. Sometimes, I think as women too, we're taught to hold our bellies in. So we stop using our diaphragm and we just breathe from up here, and it can create anxiety because it's very shallow breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then from there, really mindful awareness. So, we have to be mindful of what we say to ourselves. That can cause a lot of anxiety because it is our thoughts that create our emotions, then our body will respond.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In day-to-day living, unless we go into fight or flight, then the body takes over, the thinking goes away. And so it's either bottom up or top down. So depending on what's going on, if we're not really, really anxious, if it's not so much in the body, we need to be working more top down to keep the body calm. Okay.
And that mindfulness is something to tap into. I see with my patients, they will tell me things like, I always thought I had to live with this, or I just always knew that I was going to have trouble because I've always had a bad back and I've just never felt good in this area. And those are the messages they're telling their body the whole time. They're telling themselves all day long that their pelvic floor isn't going to work, or they're going to wet their pants, or their back isn't going to work. And that negative message is the wrong input to be giving your body. And you're speaking to also probably the mind talk that we all have when you think you're not good enough, you think you're an imposter, you're thinking that you screwed something up, you're second guessing that you said something and you shouldn't have been saying it that way, which we're seeing a lot with our kids.
Right.
Kids these days are continually feeling like they're imposters and often feeling like they're not good enough. There's this huge weird bar online with TikTok and Instagram that is showing them a fake world and a fake way of being. And then our kids here at home can't measure up to that.
Right.
Or if we have a child who's a perfectionist, a lot of the young ladies who are straight A students who are perfectionists, they really struggle with anxiety because they don't have, I don't know why, because they don't have resiliency to be able to handle if they get a B in a class, or if they have a lot of fear of failing.
Well, perfectionism is never about being your best self and doing things well. Perfectionism is always an attempt to avoid feelings of shame. So shame is when we feel like we're not good enough or never good enough. So the goal is we then create a belief, well, if I can just be perfect, then I can avoid that really painful emotion. And it doesn't work.
Look at that. She's such a good counselor. Okay, so perfectionism is about avoiding shame.
Always, always.
So where does the shame come from? A lot of times it goes back to childhood stuff, right?
It can. Shame is a really effective parenting tool. The
parents did it?
Well, no. We do, we can inadvertently,
Uh-huh.
but even cultures use shame. You think of the old town squares where you shame someone who stole and put them in the
Mm,
paddocks or
mhm.
whatever you call that. You shame people into compliant behavior.
Mhm.
But really the biggest thing is culture. It is our toxic, we really do have a very toxic culture we live in because we live in a capitalist, consumerist culture
Mhm.
that sells products based on our insecurity. So we have, and with social media, we are constantly comparing ourselves. So everything there's a bar
Mhm.
in which, and the problem is the bars are unrealistic. It
Yeah.
is unrealistic for every woman to look like a toothpick with large breasts. It's unrealistic for every man to look like the Incredible Hulk. But when we don't reach what we think are cultural standards, we are then going to feel shame. Then we have another cultural input for women, especially is good girl culture, that I like to say we women are allowed a postage stamp size piece of real estate on this planet in which we are allowed to live. And so we pirouette, we try to stay on this tiny little piece of real estate by being pretty, pleasing, perfect, and petite, and perform all the time. And it's really hard to balance, to find that balance in which we're socially acceptable. So we're not allowed to be authentic, and we're constantly trying to put ourselves in this little box so that other people like us.
Mhm.
We're taught our biggest value
Mhm.
is that what other people think of us.
Mhm.
So
Especially for women, we
Right.
want everybody to like you.
right, that's what we're brought up as. That's good girl culture. That is your value in this world, not your intelligence,
Mhm.
not what you bring to the world. So we're living disadvantaged by not living authentic lives for listening to our inner compass and what's really best for me. And so it's this constant
Mhm.
needing our worth, our sense of worth is placed outside of us in the hands of others, what they think of me, it's not in here. And
Mhm.
that causes also a lot of anxiety and depression because we don't feel good
Yeah.
about ourselves.
Well, and there's a disconnect.
Mhm.
Your inner being, your soul, your personality, you,
Yeah, your true
are-
nature.
your true nature
Mhm.
is not operating in accordance with who you authentically are.
Right. Because we're
So-
trying to fit in.
When someone's working with you,
Mhm.
you are working to try to get them to be able to be fully present into their true self.
Right. Find out who that is.
So
have to
you
find
help
it.
them find out who that is.
Right.
Yeah, that is what a good counselor can do. She's amazing.
You're so sweet.
No, this isn't sweet. I'm telling you, Anya really has a gift. It's powerful. The time that you would spend with Anya or a similarly talented counselor is going to be very, very helpful in moving you forward. That would be incredible for individuals just to be able to be authentically themselves in this world without always second guessing it, right?
Right. And to be okay with, I'm okay with my quirks and my flaws to be.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we need society, probably for us parents, we need to be telling our kids, it's perfectly fine if you got the B. It's perfectly fine if you don't always look cute, and you don't have to be top at everything, right?
And that's hard because we are fighting, but that's not what the culture says.
I know.
That's the hard part.
I know. The culture says you have to
Right.
get admitted to Harvard.
Right. Right.
Okay, so one of the questions that we received was from a parent who wanted to know how to support their children who are in high school, going through college application process. That's a very stressful time for their kids. Maybe their kids are experiencing anxiety, and parents experience anxiety that time. How do we as a family unit and as a parent support our child through that without contributing to the anxiety and with helping everybody get through this intact, mind, body, and spirit intact?
Oh, I remember that time.
Yeah. Anya's children are very accomplished, and she has partnered with them and really helped them to grow to be strong young women.
Yes, but I will say that they didn't go to four-year college. So
because you were open to them having alternative paths, right?
And them being their authentic selves, which
I
are
love
very
that.
creative. They are not four-year school students. They are highly creative, and for both of them what they want to do, you don't need a college education.
Mhm.
And allowing them to, that would cause them so much more stress and anxiety.
Mhm.
But again, what we're opening up here is something that's very large, and what we're asking or needing help with our children, it's not a quick fix.
Mhm.
But let me give some tidbits. We know more now about the human brain in the last 10, 20 years than we have all of human existence. And that has changed parenting and what we know to be important. Used to be back in the day that parenting was getting your child to comply with what you
Mhm.
say and to behave. Now we understand how important human beings' emotional well-being is. We were not raised knowing how to regulate our emotions. We were taught to shut down our emotions. You know, don't make people uncomfortable. You can't be angry. Don't cry, things like that. So I think one of the biggest things we can do for our children is help them understand their emotions and regulate them.
Okay.
One, we need an emotional vocabulary. They need to know their emotions.
Okay.
So let me give you a little tidbit. There's a fabulous app called Mood Meter. And it's 99 cents. I bought a book.
Mood meter, the
Yes.
app.
It's called Mood Meter.
Okay.
And it is based on this book. I'm doing a promo for someone else. Permission to Feel. This came out a couple of years ago by Mark Brackett, PhD.
Hold it up.
Can you get closer there?
Yes.
Okay. This gentleman created a program that's in over 2,500 schools across the country to help build emotional intelligence in children. And it's called Ruler. So here, what Ruler stands for is the first R is we have to recognize we're having an emotion. A lot of us don't even recognize that we're having emotions. U is we have to understand why we're having the emotion. L is we have to label it, so put a word on it. E, how do we express that emotion appropriately? And then the final R is we have to learn how to regulate our emotions. Okay, because we don't.
Yeah, one of the chat comments was permission to feel, which is true. You want to have permission.
Yes,
That's the
right.
name of the book.
Yes.
And you want to have permission to feel. I love this. So what grades is this in? RULE. Recognize the emotion.
Ruler.
RULER.
Yep. And I can't see the chat, sorry. So I'm bringing the book because, so he created this PhD work was creating this to help children have, you know, emotional vocabulary, a high EQ. But then he had another stumbling block when he took it to the schools, the teachers and the administrators, the adults said, why do we need to teach this? We don't get it. That's how separated we are from our emotions. I love it. He really refers to emotions. They're just data. We don't have to be afraid of them. It's information for us. So if you think about it, there's no other area in our lives where we would make decisions with a whole bunch of data missing. You would not buy a car without knowing how much it costs, what your mileage is going to be. But when we ignore our emotions, we're making decisions with a whole bunch of data missing. Okay, so it's important. So because we are so terrible at identifying our emotions, he's created here. I'll show you what the app is. So it shows it on the inside of the book. Okay, this is what the app looks like. And because we're so terrible, there's an X and Y axis. So when you open it up, you first check in I guess it's the X, I forget. It's terrible at math. Okay.
X.
The X-axis is low to high pleasantness. So we check in, how pleasant do we feel low to high?
Okay.
The Y-axis is low to high energy. So energy in the body, how much energy do we have? So if we look at it, the red part is high energy, unpleasant. There's a lot of energy in the body and it doesn't feel good.
Oh, like you're agitated?
Yes.
What is one of the things?
So some of the emotions are angry, frustrated, worried, concerned, jittery, shocked, panicked, stressed, furious.
Okay, yeah.
A lot of energy in the body. So it helps us pinpoint what we feel.
Okay.
Low energy, unpleasant. There's not a lot of energy in the body. This is lonely, disheartened, disappointed, glum, down, sullen, things like that. Green is kind of probably optimal. This is low energy, pleasant. So content, at ease, secure, chill, restful, things like that.
Peaceful.
Yeah. High energy, pleasant. I call that for young people. Let's go into the clubs. I'm not here very often. This is excited, cheerful, festive, exhilarated, upbeat, surprised. Okay. The app is great. It lets you document it and it collects the data. It asks you then, it connects with what's going on for you that's making you feel this. So you're now making a connection between what's going on in my life and what I'm feeling. And it takes you through a couple other steps just to, you know, do you want to shift this emotion? Do you want to stay? And by doing this, it also gives you a definition of each emotion. So it allows you to build an emotional vocabulary. So you can pick, oh, right now I feel sad. Okay, it'll give a definition. If you don't like that, you can go back and say, that's not really accurate. You can go back and find another word. And so knowing what these words mean is really, really helpful. I think this is great for everyone. So then we can,
So this could be used with these parents who gave some questions.
Yeah.
You could use this, the parent could get the app, the kid could get the app, and then they have like a family project where they're like, hey, look, why don't we have the month of March, we're going to dial into our moods. Let's see how we're all feeling and expressing.
Yeah, or sharing.
Oh, sharing.
I say do it a lot. If you are just going on your phone just to mess around, check in with Mood Meter first. You want lots of data. So the other cool thing about the app is it collects the data and it graphs it for you. So it lets you know what times of day you feel certain ways. You also pick, do you feel whatever emotion at home, at school or work, or another situation? So you get to plot out, and you can see, wow, I'm really in high energy, unpleasant at work. That's good data.
That is, yeah,
Maybe,
something has to change.
Yeah, something has to change. So it documents it, and it's just really helpful. The more data you can put in, the better, because we have emotions that go up and down all day long.
I can see the value of that, high value of that for myself with my kids, because sometimes I am like, what's going on in your little head? You know, how are you feeling? I think you should be all happy, but you're not.
Right.
You know, what's the issue? So, okay, Mood Meter app.
Yep.
And it could be a family project if you can get buy-in with your kids. And the results of getting all of this data might show the children or the parents different things that could be modified. Like you might notice that there's a trend that every time they're at their job at the ice cream store, they're plummeting in their mood. And maybe we need to get rid of that job if they're a teenager.
Right.
Interesting. Because the teenager might not have realized that, right?
Right. And the other thing is we need to learn to be with the emotions, to not push them away. The only way out of an emotion is through it. We can't bypass it and avoid it. And that's the scary part, to be, what we're afraid of with uncomfortable emotions is how they feel in our body. Okay. So if we can just stay with that physiological feeling, it will dissipate in 2 minutes. And then we can be with whatever the emotion is. That's what we're afraid of and we avoid. And that's what we as parents, we need to do for ourselves. We didn't learn this, and to teach our children that the goal is not to avoid shame. The goal is to realize it's a human emotion, and I'm not going to crumble because I don't feel good enough. That this is part of life.
So you're working with them and helping them understand and identify their emotions, and also experience them, figure out who their true self is. But what if they're in a circumstance that legit needs to change? You help them to figure that out. Like, wow, maybe you're at the wrong university, or maybe I, as an adult, am operating in a high stress way with my children. You help that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Look at things clearly. I get to be that objective third party who doesn't have any skin in the game. Yeah. And can just really speak to what I'm seeing based on what they're presenting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if anybody watching has questions, put them in the chat, because so far there were a couple things that Anya offered. One was to work on diaphragmatic breathing. The other is the mood meter. And she's also talking about trying to get yourself and your children to be comfortable with who they are in this uphill battle of today's society. That's hard.
Right. And what we get with those three things are the three internal experiences: our thoughts about ourselves within the world, our emotions, and mood meter helps with that, and the breath work, things like that help with the body. That is really what we need to be working on: our thoughts, our emotions, our body.
Thoughts,
Those three together create our internal
Okay.
experience.
So we did have a question from a parent who has a child in college.
Okay.
And the child is experiencing anxiety, and it sounds like they're having phone calls home and the child's really upset. Or, you know, this young lady is very upset on the phone call and maybe experiencing an anxiety attack or just a complete meltdown. So the parent is left on the phone like, how do I support you? It's very difficult over the phone. What would you suggest for those circumstances?
Oh boy, we all know those.
Yeah.
First off, you know, I don't know if it's panic or not. But the first thing, because they are in a high state of arousal, is to try to calm their body down. So ask them just to slow down their breathing, just to breathe. Okay, they tend to be in their heads and just, you know, saying all kinds of things. And what I've often had to do with my daughter, who had a lot of anxiety in college, she did go 1 year to art school. Okay. Was sometimes I would also then I would start breathing. All I would do in the phone is just to slow down my breathing. And then she would start to mirror that. So I would breathe deeply. And then all I would do is just breathe slowly. And then she would start to follow.
Oh, you would breathe on the phone.
Yes.
And she was responsive to it. She was willing to go along with that.
She was.
You have to have
Yeah.
someone who's willing to go
Yeah.
along. I could imagine they're like, Mom, stop it. I don't want to hear your breathing. What if they say that?
You just keep doing it. There's something called mirror neurons.
I know
which
that.
means-
Yes.
Yeah. So hopefully, you know, the mirror neurons will kick in, because you saying stuff, they're in fight or flight. The frontal lobes are gone. They're not thinking. They're not listening to a single word you're saying. You cannot rationalize with them.
Okay.
You have to calm the body.
Okay. So it can begin with breathing.
It has to. You have to calm the body to bring the frontal lobe back
Okay.
in.
And then what other things? So let's say we calm this person on the
Okay.
phone, and now they might be able to have a more measured conversation with us. We want to get to their emotions, or what do you want to get to?
From there, what I usually do is, because it is the thoughts that are creating the emotions. So what is it you're telling yourself? It's
Okay.
usually a story. For kids in college, it can be, my roommate and I got in a fight, and you know, then it's creating all these beliefs. So checking in with what they're saying. Then we as the adult, I always say we're the external prefrontal cortex. That's
Aw.
our logic part of the brain. That's what we are as a parent. You know,
It's
and
true.
when they're little,
Yeah.
I mean, they'd go out in the snow naked and freeze to death. You know, we have to regulate that stuff. We have to be the logic. So first we validate their experience. Even inside we think it's, oh my gosh, really? It's not that big of a deal. Okay, we have to validate that it's difficult for them. I'm so sorry, honey. I know that's hard. Once we validate, they feel like we're on their side and that they're understood. Then we have an opportunity to maybe give,
Okay.
to say, okay, honey, maybe do you know, if they feel are with it enough, we'd say, so what do you think you can do
Mhm.
to maybe mend this, or, you know, or what's the worst that could happen? Try to empower them first. We are there as the consultant, you know, or we that can then offer, well, you could talk to this person. Why don't you go talk to your professor? You know, things like that.
You are reminding me, probably 15 years ago, I read the book, The Whole Brain Child.
Oh, good.
It's such a good book.
choice.
Yeah. So the Whole Brain Child author came to a university, and I went to hear her speak. And in that book, she talks about what you just said. And one of her lessons that she gave that I have always used since then as a parent, she says, never meet an emotional tsunami with an emotional tsunami. Meaning, years ago, I might have gotten really frustrated and aggravated with one of my kids, and you know, I want to fly off the handle and yell at them, but that would make my kids way worse. They're super upset because I met your anger and I raised it. That doesn't work.
Right.
And so what you just said was the same thing that she said, which is the first thing you do is validate. like, oh, it must be so difficult because you're really experiencing difficulty with your roommate. You're just validating it,
Right.
even if you feel what they are telling you is frivolous.
Right.
Okay. And then you said that as our role is to be their external frontal cortex, so we might try to bring logic into it to try to use motivational interviewing to help get them to perceive a solution, or we might suggest a solution. Talk to your counselor. Is
Right.
that right?
Right.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
could you talk to your counselor? What would help you? Maybe you need to go out to lunch with a friend and just have a good time.
Right.
Okay.
And if we can empower them to come up with their own ideas, that helps to build the logic.
Okay.
Yeah. And then seeing, do we need to get them into counseling? Which.
They probably would benefit from counseling, right? Yeah.
Right.
And then in the case of our kids, you have mentioned a lot about mind, body, spirit health. If our kids' body is not healthy,
Mhm.
then that can be a problem. So we might be able to say, you know, I don't see you exercising the way you used to, or you gave up your dance, or you're no longer on club soccer. What are you going to do to replace that, right? Because these youthful people need to move to express some of their
Right.
stuff.
But I'm concerned about that.
Okay,
That
tell me.
could bring shame.
Oh, okay, shame.
Yes. That's going to bring more shame because you're telling them something they're doing wrong.
But what if they're not moving?
That's true.
Okay,
Um,
so you don't suggest to them that they could get moving to feel better in their mind, or you have to be careful how you say
you
it.
have to be careful. Right.
Okay.
Right. And especially with girls when there's with body image issues.
Yeah, that's so touchy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So again, ask them, do you think you'd feel better? Is there something, you used to enjoy doing this? Do you think you would want to do that again? Would that make you feel better?
Okay.
Yeah, try to, soften it, unfortunately.
Soften that up. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say you do say, oh, you used to really enjoy doing this. Would that make you feel better? And they're like, no, I don't like that anymore. I was 12 when I did that. So what if you're picking up on that they are resistant to that, or anything, those types of suggestions, or maybe you're worried that there's a little bit of depression. If they have signs of that, in addition to the anxiety, they could benefit from a counselor.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
Very helpful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think you have to be careful who's providing the advice and the counseling to someone, yourself or your child, because you
Right.
want to make sure that they're receiving the right type of
Right.
care.
And on college campuses, it tends to be pretty short term, the counseling. So might have to find someone off campus or,
Okay.
yeah.
So if they're on a college campus, maybe the college has like a mental health or something department, but you can only get a couple appointments if you're
there.
lucky.
Start there.
Okay, so start
Mhm.
there, but you may expect to have to work with somebody off campus.
I think so. In this day and age, again, we as parents were not taught these skills. We did not expect this kind of culture that is the social media that has
That's
created
true.
so much anxiety.
Yeah.
Another part of why we're all having more anxiety too is that technology is changing so fast,
Mhm.
faster than our brains can keep up. And we get anxiety and we don't have time to process things, and things just keep changing so rapidly.
Mhm.
So we as older people are also experiencing some of that. So we need new tools.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
The whole society needs new tools.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why
Right.
we're all suffering. I mean,
Right.
you can see as a culture where we're not at our best self, everybody.
And
Like
and
we can do
remember-
better.
Yeah, and remember that anxiety is normal. We are supposed to have anxiety. Anxiety is a tool to help us identify potential danger. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what kept our cave people ancestors alive, was being fearful and anxious. But our anxiety can become dysfunctional. And it's
Mhm.
dysfunctional when we believe we're unsafe when we're actually safe.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's what we have to work with. we're not unsafe because we're not a size 0. But psychologically, because of the culture, some people believe that.
You might feel that way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or you could be in a wonderful relationship, but you don't think it's the right relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all perception.
Because if you feel
becomes our
threatened
reality.
or something.
Right.
Yes.
Perception is our reality.
I do have another question for you. We in pelvic health physical therapy, we work with a lot of pregnant and postpartum people. And over the pandemic, I'm seeing what I would consider to be a higher amount of women who are compared to before the pandemic, who are experiencing postpartum anxiety or pregnancy anxiety. So it's a special, I think culturally, we know a little bit more, there's some awareness about postpartum depression, but I'm not consistently finding that people are aware that you can experience pregnancy related anxiety and postpartum anxiety. And we do screening here at Purple Mountain Physical Therapy for that, so that we can try to bring that awareness to a person's mind and suggest that they work with a counselor. In your experience working with those individuals, what are the things that they should be looking for that might be their symptoms or signs of it? Is it the same list you gave earlier?
No. Well, if you have the scale, so postpartum anxiety and pregnancy anxiety is a little different. It tends to be around fears about the baby, having, not being okay. Then once we have the baby, fears that the baby will be hurt, fears that really a lot about, it's shame-based again, that we're not a good enough mom. I've worked with women who feel shame because their birth plan didn't go the way they expected and they needed an emergency C-section.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, where
that is a common
anxiety.
trauma.
Yes.
Yeah.
And pandemic has a lot to do with it. I think all of our anxiety, but what I'm seeing is if we look at, and this is all anecdotal on my part, but what I'm seeing is that we look at child rearing age, women in their 20s and 30s. This is the age that we're really immersed in phones, in technology from a younger age, and social media is such a part of their life. And I do see a lot of the postpartum anxiety is because of shame. Again, shame is just so ubiquitous. And it is that judgment of, I'm not a good enough mom because of culture, society, and all the books, now I'm seeing it around, we're not on the right sleep schedule. And we've lost our connection, like, what are you talking about? A sleep schedule?
Yeah.
Baby's tired, they fall asleep.
I know.
So that's, how much it's changed just from the time my kids were little. And I feel like, have we lost our maternal intuition? That now there's these rules for everything. And if there's rules, then that means there's an opportunity we're not doing it right and we're failing.
Yes.
Instead of trusting that my child knows when they need to sleep.
Yeah.
And,
right.
When they're little, they can sleep in the car seat while we're in the grocery store, whatever it is. Instead of, I'm seeing families who don't go anywhere. We can't go do that because they're, it doesn't work with the sleep schedule and things like that.
And so if individuals are experiencing that, they would benefit from a counselor because for the reasons we've talked about. But in my experience, I think it also helps you, it gives you these like skills to be more fully present parenting your child through their, through their teen years. And I mean, we're speaking to that special time, pregnant and postpartum, when someone might have that. But what you're talking about is underlying shame. I'm not good enough. That I'm not doing it right. All the pressures that we parents, moms and dads have to be like perfect and to raise these kids just right and to get them reading early and walking early and talking early and just doing so good. And that's just so much pressure on us. And I am seeing in the postpartum phases now, many of my patients have babies that are just experiencing some challenges. So these brand new parents are really placed in a situation where right off the bat, they feel like they've done something wrong because my baby isn't sleeping, or my baby isn't eating right, or my breast milk never came in. And you didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
You didn't.
Right.
You are doing a wonderful job. And what you're experiencing is really tough. And having the support of a counselor like Anya will help you get through this more whole, more healthy, and better able to be present in all of your relationships with your partner and your friends and your colleagues and your baby.
Yeah. And speaking of support, that's another reason why postpartum depression and anxiety are so high in our culture. Women just don't get the support that they need. Even Europe is much different. I mean, 24 hours, you're allowed 24 hours from the time you have a baby to get out. Husbands are, or partners are not allowed, baby leave.
I know.
And it used to be, we lived multi-generationally. Way back before that, we lived in bands and tribes where you had that help and support. And now so many women are on their own.
Oh, I know.
And it's terrible. And that also feeds into that. A lot of anxiety and depression.
American Physical Therapy Association this past Sunday did a webinar on the fourth trimester, which is really the first year after having a baby. And it was we had international speakers from all around the world, physical therapists, talking about what does the fourth trimester look like over in the UK? What does it look like in Australia? And what does it look like in Canada? I'll tell you, it looks a lot better than here. And it's not even fabulous in all of those places. There's a room for improvement. But if you give birth in Canada, you get a year off of your job and you're guaranteed to be able to come back to your job. Whereas I saw a patient today who went back to her work at 10 weeks postpartum, which many of us do and have done, because she got her 6 weeks and then she had 4 weeks unpaid. And so now they needed to go back. That's what we're up against in America. It's just,
it's terrible.
It's
tragic.
So what you are saying is maybe we could all do better supporting each other throughout pregnancy and postpartum, and that might help with anxiety. So if you know a pregnant person, why don't you reach out and offer to help? And what I would say for us females is our tendency is to decline help. Mm-hmm. Somebody says, I want to make you dinner. And we're like, oh no, you don't have to do that. My husband's great at that. We've got it covered. Like, if somebody offers to help you, say yes, please. Because you're going to help somebody else. That's the type of person you are. So don't decline the help. And years ago, one of my friends said to me, if you are always declining someone else's help, you are robbing that person the opportunity to feel better about themselves and to be giving. So if you think it's selfish to accept the dinner they're offering you, why don't you consider that it's selfish to decline the dinner because you're taking away a chance from somebody else? You wouldn't like that language. Anya doesn't like selfish, but you get my
No, you know what it is? It's worthy.
Worthy. Okay. Worthy.
So again, it's good girl culture. And we are great as women at giving. We are terrible at receiving.
Yeah, we are.
Because we are taught our only value, again, is in what we do for others, put ourselves on the back burner. And we don't think we deserve help. We don't think we deserve gifts. Yeah. It's, again, tragic. Yeah. That we don't think we're worthy of that. So we exhaust ourselves because of that.
Oh yeah, we'll run ourselves up into the wall, to adrenal exhaustion, into having migraines that are constant, irritable bowel syndrome. It comes out in the body like you're talking about. And then I see it in my patients with physical stuff like, oh, my back has always hurt me for 15 years, or my hip or my feet, my plantar fasciitis. We have a very go culture, and we're pretty amazing people, the women of the world. I really do think we're incredible, and look at what we're doing, but we've got the whole world on our shoulders. Like, we need a break. We need support.
Right. And emotional pain is stored in the body. Mm-hmm. Always. So that's another reason why we have to listen to the body, to the emotions, and to our thoughts. All that data together and put it together like, maybe I need to go get some help.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm thinking about summarizing some of the things that we talked about, you are really wanting people to get in tune with their body. If they're a parent, you want to mirror to your child how to get in tune with their body through breathing and understanding their emotions.
Mhm.
And
And what creates them? What creates the emotions? What are they saying to themselves? It's probably pretty negative
yeah,
that creates the emotions.
that's
Mhm.
really important.
Mhm.
The soundtrack you have in your
Right,
head.
right.
We can't have that be negative all the time, because that's going to be giving you problems. And then getting support from your friends and your family if you're going through a difficult time is helpful. But I will tell you, just having chats or relying on your family to talk through all of your problems, that's not enough. We need counselors. If you are a parent and we're all experiencing the pandemic, we all need the support. But if you're experiencing some challenges nowadays, get a counselor and find someone who's wise. And if you have a child who you can tell is struggling, get them a counselor and find someone who's wise. You need to work with someone who's really quite good.
Well, and I always say finding a therapist is like finding a hairdresser. You have to speak the same language. You have to feel like they understand you. So it does have to be a good fit as well. Don't stay with someone if you don't feel like you're getting what you need from it, or you don't feel like they understand you, or you feel judged. All things to consider.
Yeah, I recently had a patient tell us, it came in and said, I don't want to tell you everything that's been going on with me. I'm not going to get into all of it, because every time I talk to somebody about it, they get confused. So that person has really felt dismissed and misunderstood by multiple medical providers. And in our case, we specialize in complex pelvic problems. So we wanted to hear the whole story. And then at the end of hearing the whole story, our response is, well, that doesn't confuse us at all. In fact, we can kind of connect some pieces for you. You're experiencing XYZ, and some of the things you told me, this, and this, come together to create that scenario. And you're speaking to, if you're with a counselor, you want someone who's going to be able to validate you, who will support you. You don't want to be working with someone who is thinking that for somebody who you are perceiving thinks badly about you. I have had patients have that. I've had patients. Yes, I have had patients who have said to me, I think I might need to find a different counselor. Sometimes there's religious differences between the patient and the counselor. There can be a variety of reasons. And sometimes that counseling relationship was wonderful for a season, and then you need to move on to somebody else who has different techniques, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Do any of you have any questions for us? I think we covered most of our questions. And Anya, do you have something that you wanted to talk about? Otherwise, I will wrap this up.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could tell us how people can work with you, Anya. I'm just checking that.
You can go to my website, anyanyson.com is probably the easiest way.
Okay.
So ANYANYSON.
And you can work with individuals either in person here in East Grand Rapids or through telehealth.
Yes.
And I know she's very busy. So do you have availability, or it depends? It depends upon their availability.
I could, we could squeeze somebody in possibly.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So if you might be interested, I would grab that. Because what's going on in West Michigan, and I believe it's happening all over, you cannot get in with a counselor. So Anya's been really generous tonight sharing her insights here. I hope you got a sense of the wisdom and the ease with which she works with somebody, and how she can really pinpoint where some of us might be having recurrent thoughts that are unhelpful, or habits, or lack of mindfulness. Her approach that does include all of the skills that a strong counselor has, plus her background as a yoga instructor and bringing mindfulness and mind body into the program that she works on with patients is really powerful. Her patients that I have worked with have told me all of this. And I hear a lot of stories about people working with counselors. I love counselors. You all are changing the world, and it's such important and valuable work that you do. If there's any counselors here watching or listening, I want to thank you for your work. And I so appreciate that Anya was here tonight talking to us. Please do check out her website, anyanyson.com, ANYANYSON.com. You can reach out to her there and that will get you there. I see that somebody chatted. Oh, and that was just put her website up there. So the website is linked in the chat. Thank you, Bethany. I think Bethany did that. And the other thing to download right now before you finish with us, go to that Mood Meter app, 99 cents. That sounded pretty cool. I think I'm going to get my whole family on it.
Yeah, do it.
Thank you everyone so much for attending, and I appreciate that you were listening, and we hope to be here at Purple Mountain Physical Therapy, bringing in other speakers, perhaps one each month. We're going to be bringing in a doula. We're bringing in a woman who's talking about the menstrual cycle and hormones and fertility. We've got some special things planned. So
Exciting.
please watch us on
Love
Instagram. Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that's great.
I put all that stuff out on Instagram at Purple Mountain PT and on our Facebook page, Purple Mountain Physical Therapy. Feel free to reach out. I would love, if you want us to bring anybody in to speak about a topic, let me know. I'm always open to your ideas. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.